the wrestler Logan Paul paid $16 million for a Pokémon card.
What surprised you most when you were reporting this story?
That people who have $16 million would spend it on a Pokémon card.
Hello from New York. I'm Ellie Austin, and you're watching Fortune Daily. So apparently, in the head-scratching world of AI, attempts to cut costs still somehow come with a $6 billion price tag. According to a Bloomberg report, Anthropic is reportedly in talks to buy NVIDIA-backed startup Descartes for about $6 billion. So Descartes builds technology that's designed to make AI systems run faster and more efficiently. And it's a move that could help Anthropic handle the costs of serving more Claude users without simply buying more chips. There's a big signal here about where the AI race is going, because for the last few years, the question has simply been, who has the smartest model? Now it's becoming who can deliver that model fastest, cheapest, and at the scale of millions of daily users. In other words, the battle is moving from the chatbot itself to the plumbing and the engineering behind it. Putting the eye-watering price tag aside, a $6 billion price tag suggests that efficiency is becoming one of the most valuable assets in tech. But what if you wanted to spend double the money? Imagine that. Well, then you could buy a sports team, or rather, a global entertainment asset, because that's what they now seem to be called. So according to Fortune News editor Katerina Giorno, Bob Iger and Thrive Capital founder Josh Kushner, yes, the Kushners are absolutely everywhere, are buying the Los Angeles Lakers for about $12.5 billion. It's the highest price tag ever paid for a US sports franchise. And it's up 25% from the $10 billion valuation that businessman Mark Walter paid just 14 months ago. So a pretty solid and pretty swift ROI for him there. It's a fitting match because Jerry Buss turned the Lakers into Showtime. That's to say, basketball as Hollywood entertainment. Iger built Disney by owning stories people already loved with Pixar, with Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Fox. Kushner built Thrive with early bets on Instagram, Spotify, Stripe, and OpenAI. So the bigger takeaway is that sports ownership is now about more than tickets or arenas or even championships. It's become big business entertainment in itself. It's about live content, global fandom, sponsorship, media rights, and an IP engine that simply never stops producing. The Lakers were already a Hollywood production, but now they're being bought by people who know how to turn iconic brands into fully fledged empires. On to more modestly priced items. Next up, a toy story with senior writer Phil Wahba. Hasbro's CEO has made an audience pivot to adults, and it's really paid off. We'll also hear about the businesses that are bringing CEOs out of retirement and back to the corner office. And reporter Sasha Rogelberg shares one startup's answer to data center anxiety. More Fortune Daily ahead. Phil, hello. So we're here to talk about brands making toys that grown-ups are using. But before we do that, I think we should be honest about any kind of collecting proclivities we might have. Well, who are those two little guys on the table?
Well, these are Smurfs, and I have been collecting Smurfs for half a century.
Okay.
A drama happened in my household a generation ago. My mother threw out most of my Smurfs when I moved to New York.
I'm sorry.
And she was right. She gave me about 10 warnings. And then when a few years ago, I started missing my Smurfs, and I started rebuilding the collection.
Okay, we've got a Smurf holding a surfboard, and we've got a Smurf.
And this Smurf will soon be living on your shelf. He inhales chocolate cake like your viewers inhaled business insights.
Phil, that's perfect. Thank you for thinking of us. So you have a very personal connection to this story that we're talking about today. Tell us why you wanted to report on this new strategic shift at Hasbro.
Well, beyond the fun stuff of it, it's really giving a lot of brands a new source of revenue, or a sustainable form of revenue. We saw Hasbro has been making a lot of money. They've dived into the world of collectible cards, and that has really been a boon for them. And they also have revived a lot of their board games, games that Gen Xers played when they were growing up. And so this whole nostalgia thing has been helping Hasbro and other brands too. You also see, for instance, Moschino had a Bugs Bunny capsule a couple of years ago. A few years before that, Gucci teamed up with that rabbit, and I have a sweater from that collection.
Of course you do, yes.
Barnes & Noble has been selling coloring books for adults by the boatload for years, and it is a gigantic business for them.
So what does this desire for nostalgia tell us about modern society and what it means to be an adult today?
Well, I think we should all be allowed to remain kids as long as we want. Let your inner child bloom. But also, I think it shows that a lot of brands have much more shelf life than they might have imagined. And you look at Peanuts. Peanuts seems to do a collaboration with every brand under the sun, and people aren't tired of it yet. So it shows that there's a love of past brands, and also that it's these brands can have a very long life for companies.
And there's this word being thrown around that I hadn't heard being used a lot in the business space, Kidult. Tell me about that word.
Well, it's an atrocity and a crime against the English language, courtesy of the PR industry complex that also brought us mompreneurs. But we know what it means. It basically means adults gravitating towards the brands and things that they loved as children.
Got it. And so Hasbro, just to give people context, known for Transformers, G.I. Joe, Peppa Pig, Furbies, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking before I spoke to you today, we're hearing a lot about the plummeting fertility rate at the moment in this country and globally. Could that be an explanation as to why these traditionally children-focused toy companies are shifting their attention to an older consumer?
Well, it could be, but I just think there's less stigma than there might have been a generation ago about liking things for kids. I think 20, 30 years ago, it would look weird for somebody to be wearing a Snoopy shirt on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. But now, I mean, anybody who's anybody is wearing Snoopy or Bugs Bunny.
And Hasbro is doing particularly well with the female consumer, I believe. And they released a Play-Doh recently, specifically targeting adults, where you can make kind of flowers out of Play-Doh. Talk to me a bit about why you think women are so interested in this trend. Well,
because women are, as ever, are often overlooked by brands unless it's really a woman-specific thing. But it allows, it's really made Play-Doh, it's extended its life and allowed people to think of more ways to use Play-Doh. So it can create really realistic little bouquets that are delightful. And also what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic beyond Kidult items is people want to do things with their hands. So that's where you're seeing chains like Michael's doing very well. Anything and gardening and cooking, all these things have really exploded since the pandemic because people who are in front of screens their whole day are craving something tangible and fun, and harkens back to the innocence of their childhood too. That's the cherry on top.
And Hasbro's CEO actually came from Microsoft, I believe. And the company is reducing its spending on video games by about 25% per year, which is very interesting in this digital age. So talk to me a bit more about the digital fatigue that consumers are feeling and how the smartest brands are tapping into it.
We're on screens all day, and there's not enough innovation in games. And I just think people want a broader variety of activities and ways to spend their time. And collectibles are actually turning out to have quite a shelf life. Earlier this year, I wrote a story about Christie's and the auction world. And the wrestler Logan Paul paid $16 million for a Pokémon card. So this isn't just, silliness. It's actually real dollars and cents in some areas of the whole world of Kidult items.
What surprised you most when you were reporting this story?
That people who have $16 million would spend it on a Pokemon card, but to each their own, because that Bugs Bunny Gucci sweater was pricey. It was obviously not in the millions, but it was way beyond a journalist's budget.
But you had to have it.
I had to have it, and I don't regret it. In fact, I should have worn it today. If it weren't August, I would have.
The toy industry, I think it plummeted a bit during COVID, but
Yes.
it's growing again. It's coming back. Is that happening across generations?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons, you touched on it before, that the toy industry is focusing a bit more on adults is the birth rate is not that great.
Yeah.
And also there was a lot of spending on toys and video games during the pandemic to keep people busy and coming out of it. So right now, adults are actually kind of an untapped source of, well, not quite untapped. They are tapped now. Source of growth for the toy industry, which needs it. But also, it's a little bit like electronics. There are cycles when there's more new products than at other times. And now, after a couple of years of quiet, people are very interested in buying toys again.
A lot of toy makers, I'm thinking Mattel with Barbie, Marvel has tapped into big IP and has been, making big Hollywood blockbusters. Hasbro tried that, but it didn't work quite as well. Why was that?
Well, Hasbro ended up trying to own production. And then that's a whole ball of wax, right? It's studios, it's hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and the payoff is not sure. So they just decided to stick to what they were good at and be involved on the creative side and let studios and others own the actual production.
Where do you see the toy market going next? Who's their new untapped demographic?
Well, it'll be the same characters, but they just need to be nimble and follow trends. And I think we're due for another Smurf revival.
I'm sure you do. What can other industries learn about Hasbro's pivot to an older consumer?
It's not just about Gen Z. The children are our future, I agree, but there sometimes older consumers can be overlooked. We see that a lot in the clothing industry, apparel. People in their 40s and 50s aren't ready to put themselves out to pasture as early as their own parents were, and so and they have more money. So that's often an untapped market that any consumer-facing brand should remember.
Yeah, don't ignore the older consumer.
Yeah.
Phil and your two beautiful Smurf friends, thank you so much for joining us. Please stay there because there's something else I want to talk to you about in a second.
Absolutely.
So, Phil, we're here to talk about Cracker Barrel to start off with. Now, the CEO, Julie Masino, has just left the company. She was the executive who oversaw that very controversial redesign of the company's logo. Remind us briefly what happened.
So she wanted to modernize the logo, and she got rid of a couple of touches that conservatives took as a rejection of its Southern heritage, and then it turned somehow into a culture war.
And financial results at the company had improved recently. So why this abrupt change of Masino departing?
Well, the company was just shrinking less quickly, but Wall Street Journal had a story that showed that the death threats she got subjected to a year ago really caught up with her and that she had had enough. And so in January, she said, I'd like to leave, so start looking for a successor.
I mean, I don't blame her.
Well, it's insane.
It's pretty horrific. And so in was parachuted David Deno, who's a 69-year-old former CEO of Outback Steakhouse. Why him?
Well, they clearly failed to find somebody internally or even somebody younger. He's 69, and Cracker Barrel's problems are that they are not attracting younger diners. So this was seen by Wall Street as a Band-Aid, as a move to mollify investors, while they really look for somebody longer term, because at 69, how's he going to have time to really make any changes? And it's not like that he had a great record at Blooming Brands where he was before.
So he came out of retirement to do this, basically.
That's right, yeah.
Is there a gendered element to this, that Wall Street feels safe with an older white man, safer than it does with a slightly less untested woman?
Well, I think in this case, they just needed somebody, and somebody who worked in the restaurant industry. It was not the optimal choice.
Is this part of a bigger trend of CEOs being brought out of retirement to rescue companies?
Well, the problem we're starting to see with companies is that boards aren't preparing for this with sufficient time. So and CEOs are staying longer and they're staying older. So what's happening is that good internal candidates, and this is a very broad statement, a lot of them are leaving a company trying to try their luck elsewhere, or just giving up on the idea of being a CEO. And so now what you have is a lot of companies then just saying, oh God, we need a CEO, and they'll go pluck somebody out of retirement.
So what could boards be doing better to avoid this from happening?
Have the pipeline, keep working on it. And this is actually the same trend that explains why the number of women CEOs has stalled, the number of CEOs of color have also stalled. They need to have pipelines. It takes 15 to 20 years to groom somebody to be a CEO, and it can't just be this improvised thing where, oh, we need a CEO, and you need a pipeline from 2 decades before.
Phil, thank you so much. Next up, Under the Radar with my colleague Sasha Rogelberg. Sasha, hello. So you've been doing a lot of reporting recently about AI companies installing miniature data centers in people's homes. Tell me why this is happening.
All right. Well, when we think about data centers today, we think about these huge campuses that are the size of a dozen football fields. And what we're seeing now is these companies that are thinking about the environmental impact of these data centers that are growing increasingly unpopular. So a Gallup poll showed that 70% of Americans oppose the construction of data centers in their local areas. And some of the reasoning behind this is the environmental impacts, the increasing electricity costs. For example, in the state of Virginia, which has the most data centers under construction, electricity costs have increased 13% over the last year. So it's easy to understand why people dislike data centers, or at least have concerns about their construction. So you have these startups emerging, companies like the California-based Span, who are saying, okay, we can reduce the strain on the grid, we can reduce electricity costs by basically installing these tiny data centers in people's houses instead.
And does it work?
To an extent, yes. They have indeed succeeded in lowering electricity costs. However, these projects are still in the pilot phase, and these companies are saying that, we are not trying to replace these commercial data centers that you're seeing from hyperscalers, but rather we are trying to reduce the strain on the grid.
So you mentioned this is a cost-cutting exercise in some sense. Who pays for all of this?
So basically, customers of startups like Span pay a flat monthly fee of $150. It essentially covers their internet and electricity bill, and they have these small data centers that are the size of AC units installed outside of their homes in return.
So tell me a bit more about how these mini data centers work.
Right, so they are the size of AC units, and basically they used the underused electrical capacity of a home, and as a node, they're part of, in theory, hundreds or thousands of other nodes that create this cloud of compute that can be used by AI companies or hyperscalers or other service providers.
And what most surprised you when you were reporting out this story?
I think what's interesting is just what this project promises and doesn't promise.
Tell me more.
So certainly the argument that these startups are making is that it reduces strain on the grid, it has a positive environmental impact. And I spoke with a physics professor who argued that yes, that is certainly the case. But what the companies didn't promise is that these small data centers are not meant to replace the massive campuses that you're seeing. And the physics professor I spoke to really kind of set realistic expectations of what these data centers could and couldn't do as far as the environmental impact.
Would you install a data center in your home if you were approached by an AI company?
Well, I'm renting. So I'm
Good
not
get out clause. Thank you so much, Sasha.
Thank you.
This is you've managed to explain a very complex topic. Can we find more of your reporting?
Unfortune.com.
Very simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for Fortune Daily. I'm Ellie Austin. See you next time.
Oh, wait, should I put him on top? No, he'll slip off. Okay.